Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert. On this channel, we talk Kanye West, and today we're talking part 3 of the Genius Kanye Trilogy, Awakening. It comes out, 2 weeks after part 1 comes out on February 16th, so you won't be able to see it right away, but I got to catch a press screening of it or get a press copy of it and watch it. And, this was going to be the most controversial of the documentary, and if you read any of the initial reviews or talk to people that got to see it, they all talk about how the first 2 parts are so steeped in the making of the college dropout, and then it can be a little jarring getting into part 3. And some reviewers were saying it was still good. Other reviewers were saying it gets uneven. I wasn't sure what to expect. So I went into this kind of like, oh, because as we talked about in part 1, we have videos on that if you want to go back and catch my review of part 1, review of part 2. But part 1 is Coodie meeting Kanye in Chicago. Coodie was working for Channel Zero, running Channel Zero, interviewing Chicago hip-hop artists and really documenting what was going on out there in Chicago. And he kept running into Kanye and was like, I'm going to follow this kid because he just has an it factor about him. Coodie had recently seen Hoop Dreams, one of the greatest documentaries of all time, that does like a 7-year journey with these 2 middle school, high school basketball players, seeing if they'll make it to the NBA. It's like going to be the rap version of Hoop Dreams. And Coodie ends up out in New York with Kanye. Like, you get this period in Chicago, then you get this period in New York/Newark where Ye was living. And it's leading up to him getting signed by Rockefeller. So part 1 is just this kind of like 1998, 2000 into mid 2002, late 2002 when Ye gets signed. Then part 2 is the car crash, the making of Through the Wire, the release of the Through the Wire video, and then the college dropout finally getting its budget, like getting made, Kanye's star ascending, and it starts to dip a little bit into the aftermath of the college dropout, but sets that up for part 3, right? So parts 1 and 2 are so focused on that 2002 era of Ye, the before the college dropouts, the making of college dropouts, and then the arrival of the college dropouts. Part 3, there's distance. I think at one point, Coodie says it's 8 years or 6 to 8 years that he's not filming Kanye, which when I initially heard that, I was just like, no. Like, that was some of the footage I wanted to see the most, right? Like Graduation, 808s, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Watch the Throne, Yeezus. How awesome that would have been. But we get like all kinds of other footage that I don't think we've ever like seen or known before. I was still captivated. I think I should just say that. Like, part 3 still captivated me, and in some ways is my favorite of the parts, because while the first 2 are so enjoyable in terms of the underdog story and seeing Ye's rising star, like him believing in himself, the dynamic between like Coodie and Ye, there's just a lot of like positive emotion and just that way of you're watching someone succeed and figure it out and overcome hurdles, and you root for them. But in this third part, it really starts to get into a lot of the themes of what's going on and really showing that this isn't just a look at Kanye, right? Or we're just following Kanye, see what he did. There's a perspective, there's a point of view, there's a purpose to this documentary that transcends Kanye as it starts to become not just about him, but about the idea of ambition, the idea of perseverance, and then the consequences of that, right? When you succeed, what are the pressures that start to mount? How do you face those pressures? But even beyond the idea of success and the consequences of success, right? And the mental strain of that, the emotional strain of that. One of the core aspects of this film is parents and children, which is one of the core things that people talk about with Ye, right? Like everything when his mom was still around, to the loss of his mom, and then the aftermath of that. People point back to it as like the core to the Ye story, but it's not just the core to his story, right? It's something that almost all of us will have to deal with in our lifetime, is losing a parent, losing both parents. Like, the people older than us pass away, and that makes a significant impact. And the film starts to get into the impact a parent has and their presence, like how they motivate us, how they inspire us, and not just Donda and Ye, right? We're talking Coodie and Coodie's dad as well. You have this great moment where it shows Coodie's dad holding a video camera and then cuts to Coodie holding the video camera. And knowing what we know already about Ye and Ye's mom, and then Coodie and Coodie's dad, and then Coodie observing Kanye, having observed like Donda's impact on Kanye, and then becoming a father himself in the first third of this documentary. In that time that he wasn't filming Kanye, his daughter's born, Ivy, and he's very much aware of the impact you as a parent have on your child's goals, dreams, the idea of what is obtainable for them versus not at all. And that's one of the things that people talk about with Donda and Kanye all the time, right? She motivated him. She gave him confidence. She let him know anything was possible, that he could achieve anything. And that's why Kanye's story for so many is so inspirational, because he seems to, it doesn't even seem to, he is kind of the role model a lot of people have for, you can do it. Believe in yourself, believe in yourself, like believe in yourself and go and do it. And you can see how Coodie being right there, observing that, starts to bring that into like his own relationship with his parents and then his relationship with his daughter. And there's this great moment where you go from seeing Ivy as just like the birth, right, to infants, to then suddenly this like 10-year-old that's giving a speech on like wanting to make art and be great. And it starts to make it to where this is about larger things than Kanye. As I start to tear up again, I said in the last review that I cry at everything. Like if something's emotional, I just start to tear up because I can feel the emotions of it. But there's just something really beautiful, because I think a lot of people will see Kanye and be like, you know, he's Kanye, I'm not Kanye. But you can be a genius at the thing that you're genius at. There are going to be things that you are amazing at that Kanye could never do, that other people that you think of as genius and impressive can never do. You have your skills, you have your abilities. It's just a matter of time and effort, time and effort, time and effort. Like Kanye didn't succeed just because he's Kanye. He succeeded because he put in the time and effort. And I think that's the biggest takeaway of this. And the fact that the documentary, like Coodie and Chike and Jay Ivy, who helped write for this, were aware of these things, that there's a larger story to be told here and larger motivation to gain and unlock. It's really beautiful. And you don't get that in part 1 and part 2, right? It's not until part 3 that this really starts to come together. And if you're just focused on what happened next with Kanye, you're going to miss a lot of the beauty and depth that's going on in this documentary. And that's what I think makes part 3 so fascinating as well, because it's the consequences of everything. So it's like one thing if a documentary just explores the beginning, right? See, this is what it takes to succeed. But it's another thing when it goes, okay, after you succeeded, what happens, right? You're not going to have the same issues that Ye had, the same specific things. Like you might not interrupt Taylor Swift on stage. You might not say something like about George Bush in the middle of a fundraising campaign on national television, but you're going to have these things that start to impact you. And how do you deal with that? Like, I just feel like it's going to be something where people can not just get motivation from the beginning, but as they're going through other things in their life, when they feel more established, right? You're no longer just in your 20s, you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, you're a parent, you're established in your career, you're dealing with these larger things. The third part of the documentary is the thing you're going to connect to the most. And it's the thing that you're going to come back to 10 years from now and be like, I still find comfort in this. I used to connect to part 1 and part 2, but now I connect to part 3. It's just, man, it's so well done. And then, you know, getting beyond all the art nerdy things, if you're just like, but what's happening with Kanye? There's one really fascinating moment where Coodie talks about how he mentioned to Kanye, let's release a documentary. And Kanye told him he didn't want to release it because he didn't want people to know like the real him. That at this point, and we're talking like 2007, I think it was, Kanye was playing, maybe it was 2005, 2006. Kanye says he's playing a character, right? That's what he told him. Like, I'm playing a character, so I don't want people to see the real me from the documentary. which, man, just goes back to 2018. If you're in the fan base in 2018, you know that there was this whole subplot about whether or not 2018 was performance art, was Kanye like doing things. And I think in hindsight, no, right? Like Kanye truly believed everything he was saying, everything he was doing. He was earnest, right? But he did in 2018 also post all these several books from performance artists, and we knew he was like thinking about performance artists. He was putting like quotes from performance artists. I'm just curious about that dynamic, because it really does seem like something he has talked about for years now, this idea of who he is in the public versus who he is behind the scenes. What's the character, what's not the character? And you wonder how much is the act versus how much is, like, I keep getting into ideas of simulation that have come up over the last few years, right? And does that get into the character aspect? It's such a fascinating point to me, which I don't think the documentary necessarily provides an answer on, nor is it the documentary, like, it's not the focus of this documentary. It's just one of the interesting subplots or interesting moments that came up that I think for hardcore Kanye fans that are into like all this points about like, oh, this is performance art. Like, how much is performance versus not performance? Having him say as early as 2005 or 2006 that he's a character and performing as a character for the public is very fascinating. And then you also, and probably the thing that shocked me the most is we get this footage of the making of Kids See Ghosts, which I did not expect. So Ye goes to China, Coodie's with him, Cuddy's with him, and they're just making like Kids See Ghosts. And you hear, I feel like that. And I feel like that if you were around in the Kanye fan base in that 2014, 2015, where we're all waiting for So Help Me God, you get All Day coming out as an official song finally. Like All Day had leaked, people had heard it, people wanted it, and then All Day finally hits as a song, and there's a music video for it. But the music video was two parts. It was All Day, where Kanye's like very like manic, attacking the camera. They're in just this warehouse space, and he's running at the camera, running around the room, avoiding the camera. It's very high energy. And then it goes right from that to I Feel Like That. So it's like a 9-minute video combining both songs. And I feel like that Ye just slumps against a wall, has no power or energy to fight the camera or the camera like pursuing him, right? He's just down on the ground and he starts listing off like, do you ever feel like that? I feel like that, like tension, hyperness. He just starts listing symptoms. And it's one of those songs that doesn't get a lot of mainstream acknowledgement, right? Since it never officially released, but it's something to where, like, depending on how deep you are into the fan base, you're like, I Feel Like That. If only I Feel Like That had ever like officially come out. It turns out this dude is working on a album version of I Feel Like That in 2017. Like, he's recording it, and there's a whole breakout that kind of sounds like Believe What I Say, which blew my mind. Like, it gets a little funky, a little groovy. It's beautiful. Like, man, I need that song. Like, how is that? So you have moments like that where it's just like, I did not expect to hear that. And then you hear some of the Donda 2020 sessions, like Wake the Dead. I know that there were some snippets of Wake the Dead that have kind of come up, but this is kind of like hearing Kanye play some of Wake the Dead, and it's cool. And hearing another version of Keep My Spirit Alive, and yeah, Casey Pluto's vocals are there. You actually see Casey in the documentary. So not only do you get to go to China during the making of Kids See Ghosts, you get to go to Tokyo and see Ye and Cuddy talk with Murakami. We get to go to San Francisco. We see Ye talk with his dad, Ray, and Ray reminded me very much of my dad. My mom was an academic, right? She was a animal behavioralist and taught biology at Kent State University. And then my dad just worked at Ford, which Kanye's dad doesn't just work at Ford, right? He's a photographer. He's been a journalist. He's done charity work and all this like incredible stuff. But there was just like a very big difference in terms of how like brainy my mom would talk all the time, and then how kind of direct and grounded my dad was all the time. And then hearing Ray, like Ye having this FaceTime with Ray, and Ray's just like, yeah, you're okay. Okay, write your speech down next time. and just kind of very straightforward with things where Kanye's like, I'm going to go see this artist who did this like great pottery. Like, is it that cool? And his dad's like, yeah, that's cool. But just very much like dad versus mom mode, where like I could imagine Donda being like, oh, tell me more about the pottery, where that's exactly what my mom would do versus what my dad would do. So you get some of these universals in there. But there's some like, you eventually build up to Wyoming sessions for Donda, and you're seeing like Bieber around, Dame Dash around. It's the aftermath of the South Carolina speech. And there's this great moments where looking at kind of the finesse of the filmmaking that's going on is Coodie talks about how he always kept the camera on, but he had this first time experience when he was with Ye in 2020, I think it was, where he finally turned the camera off because he just started to feel like it was invasive at that point based on how Ye was behaving, what he was saying. And he says it the first time, right? But then there's a second time where he's filming and then you just kind of see the camera go down and turn off, and then a third time. And he doesn't need to say it, like that he was continuing to feel like things weren't in the best place for Ye and that it wasn't appropriate to film. And it's such a powerful moment and an emotional moment, especially when Coodie then has the camera back on himself and is kind of giving a reaction to his time in Wyoming. It's one of the few times that the camera is just on him for a long moment and he's giving kind of my impressions of being where I am and what's happening, rather than just being in a room with Kanye and kind of turning and being like, hey. And that's like a very poignant moment because, you know, we all care about Kanye. Like Coodie has a much different relationship with Kanye than the rest of us, but fans watching this care about the man. And to see someone that also cares about him having this emotional moment of like, you know, I'm just like sad for my friend in some ways, like drained in some ways. You feel that emotion coming through. So it's just such a good, in terms of the experience of watching a film and getting the range of human emotions, going from where you are in part one, going to where you are in part three. It's such a human journey and a beautiful journey. And it's not as one-dimensional as just like, Ye's okay in the beginning and he's not okay at the end. He's still good in a lot of ways at the end. There's a lot of positives. Coodie makes sure to say like, this is this is just, Ye's the same as he's always been in so many ways. Like, this is my friend. Like, he's good. He seemed good. Like, all this stuff. So it's not as one-dimensional, not as like black and white as like good, not good, but it's just showing that things get like complicated, which then ties back to like the main themes that they're getting into in terms of success and God and genius and parents and the influence of having these people who help guide you. And we've talked about parents specifically, but one of the main things, the main takeaways that I just want to say here in case somebody hears it and then when they watch the documentary they're like, oh, is that it's not just the parents that make way for us, right? It's our elders in all these fields. Like Coodie's 7 years older than Kanye, right? And Kanye at times in the documentary talks about how he wouldn't be where he is without what Coodie did. Like the documentary, like helping him make the Through the Wire music video. Like it was the Through the Wire music video that really like broke things out. Ye had the music, he had the ability, but people weren't giving him like serious attention until that music video. And it's just like somebody that was older took the time to see something special in someone that was younger and mentored them, helped them, like helped open doors for them. And you can even see it with Dame Dash, right? There are periods in part two where Dame is kind of the one keeping Rockefeller closed from Kanye because he's not taking Kanye seriously. And then the moment Dame sees that Through the Wire music video, he suddenly opens the door and all this success for Kanye comes flooding through. And it's just like, what would have happened had that door been open from the beginning, right? As soon as Ye was signed, if that door was open, would it have made a difference in the story? But the fact that there are people that have the keys to this door and you have the key to the door for someone else, it's just something to be aware of, that as much as the journey is about you, right? And the time and effort that you're putting in and the things that you can control. The success that most people have is almost always in part to someone that is older than them, somebody that has knowledge that they don't have, just opening a door, whether it's a parent like nurturing you and encouraging you, or whether it's a mentor that's saying, you know what, I'm going to give this person a shot. I'm going to give them some shine. So be aware of the people in your life that have keys, and don't put all the burden on yourself, because even someone as Kanye, who's so associated with ego and doing things by himself, works with other people maybe more than like anyone else. Like, he's constantly bringing other people into his circle and constantly looking to mentors. And he himself has had people who needed to open doors for him. So like, just be aware of that it's not just your fault that things haven't gone your way if they haven't yet. And that at some point, if you keep persevering, keep making connections, keep doing things, the door will open. But then also be aware that you can open doors for other people, right? Like, and that can be mutually beneficial. Coodie was doing his own thing, comedy, filmmaking, when he decided to take this shot with Kanye. And as much as it benefited Kanye, it also benefited Coodie. He met Chike. They've built a whole like media company together and have this great career together from it. Like, I don't know, there's just so many aspects to this story that go beyond just Kanye that make it, I think, very triumphant. So even though they're like painful moments in part 3, there's so much beauty and so much to take away and think about and reflect on. If you're the kind of person to take things away from things, reflect on them, and learn and grow, that honestly, part 3 ends up being my favorite part. Like, part 1 and part 2 are really charming, really meaningful and emotional and fun. But part 3 is where things just kind of open up, right? And it might not be the thing that you want to put on all the time and just have playing in the background because it is so emotional. That's more part 1 and part 2. But when you really are having those, like, I need to think, I need to feel, part 3 is what you're going to go to. But overall, it's just, yeah. It's not exactly what I thought it would be, but it's better than what I hoped it would be, you know? I had wanted this like comprehensive behind the scenes making of every album, right? Which I think a lot of fans, when I posted that I saw parts 2 and 3, people are like, does it get into the making of Yeezus? Does it get into the making of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy? And the answer to that being no can be disappointing, but what you actually get is so good that it doesn't it doesn't matter what's not there, because what's there is awesome and powerful and emotional and arguably, I think fair to say, the best piece of Kanye media that's ever been made. So yeah, highly recommend you watch it. Or if you have watched it, good on you for watching that than watching this, you know? But that's it for now. Until next time, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.